I like an escalator, man, because an escalator can never break. It can only become stairs. All right. There would never be an escalator temporarily out of order sign. Only an escalator temporarily stairs. Sorry for the convenience.
On March 15th, 2005, Mitch Hedberg, a beloved stand-up best known for his observational and absurdist comedy, appeared on The Howard Stern Show. This was during the height of Howard Stern's reign as the king of all media, so showing up on the couch to chop it up with Howard, Robin, and Artie could launch a comedian from toiling on stage in dank clubs for meager paydays into the upper stratosphere of the comedy world. But even if you were aware of the stakes, Hedberg's calm demeanor and trademark laconic style didn't waver during the interview. His humor shone through as he shared his classic one-liners and even joked about his struggles with drugs, saying he had them, quote, under control. Stern and co-hosts openly reflected on his evident creative genius, which had by this point already won him adoration from his most ardent fans and peers. Hedberg's rise to fame began in the 1990s when he carved a niche with his unique style, a mix of mumbling delivery, deadpan humor, and quirky observations, which barely resembled most successful comics at the time, who tended towards loud, energetic, and boisterous presentations of largely autobiographical material and invented stories that could be shouted from the stage in large arenas. Hedberg had none of these qualities, often hiding his face behind a mop of hair and dark sunglasses while he delivered a series of perfectly crafted jokes, with no overarching theme or point of view. His comedic style was deeply influenced by a blend of observational humor, absurdist wit, and the introspective lyricism of beat poets. Drawing inspiration from comedic icons like Stephen Wright and Rodney Dangerfield, Hedberg crafted a style that was minimalist, yet impactful. His one-liners, delivered in a disarmingly casual tone, often took mundane subjects, like escalators or rice, and turned them into hilarious and sometimes even profound observations. His big break came with an appearance on The Late Show with David Letterman, whose own offbeat host seemed to understand the genius of his offerings. From there, he'd land specials on Comedy Central Presents and produced 2 highly acclaimed comedy albums, Strategic Grill Locations and Mitch Altogether. His cult following often likened his live performances to a Grateful Dead concert, with fans memorizing and reciting his punchlines alongside him. Fellow comedians, including George Carlin and Dave Chappelle, revered him as a comics comic, praising his originality and fearlessness in embracing the bizarre. But Hedberg's impact extended beyond individual comedians, reshaping expectations for stand-up as an art form and encouraging those who followed him to experiment with form and content. Indeed, the rise of alternative comedy in the 2000s owes much to Hedberg's success in breaking free from traditional comedic structures, paving the way for acts like Demetri Martin and Bo Burnham, whose clever observations and unconventional approaches has echoes of Hedberg's boundary-pushing style. And it was all right in front of him during the appearance on Howard Stern, where the conversation drifted from his comedy into just how he planned to package himself for the broader public without losing what made him so special. But around 2 weeks after the appearance on March 30th, Hedberg was found dead in a New Jersey hotel room from an accidental drug overdose. Mitch Hedberg was just 37 years old. I'm Derek Kaufman.
I'm Jason Beckerman.
And this is Last Days, Mitch Hedberg.
Given the space he occupied in the comedy scene and the fact that his popularity was largely in the college scene and underground, news of Hedberg's death was largely overlooked by the mainstream media. Although MySpace and Facebook existed, this was a few years before the absolute dominance of social media in people's lives. Howard Stern, who was fond of Hedberg and had him on the show just a few weeks earlier, announced the death on his March 31st show the day after he died.
So I don't have any details or anything, but Gary sent me a email this morning from Mitch Hedberg's manager saying Mitch died last night.
God.
Remember
What?
Mitch? You know Mitch. Mitch, the comedian who does our show?
Sure.
Yeah, good guy.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Brilliant guy. He's one of those words where brilliant actually applies.
Yeah.
Oh, my
Applied.
goodness.
Mitch was on the show about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
What? How
So-
could he have
St.
died?
Patrick's Day, I think.
I don't know. I don't have any details.
There are a lot of rumors about him with, drug use, but I don't...
Well, there's no rumors. He certainly...
He admitted it.
He certainly admits it.
But I don't know what happened here.
It's clear the crew was fond of Hedberg, and if you listen to the episode, you can really hear how affected fellow comedian Artie Lang was, who himself was widely known for battling drug addiction. The circumstances of the death itself were a bit mysterious at the beginning. Hedberg had a congenital heart defect that many believe may have played a role in his passing. But according to the New Jersey Medical Examiner's Office, the cause of death was officially revealed to be multiple drug toxicity, including cocaine and heroin. He was discovered dead in his room in the Westminster Hotel in Livingston, New Jersey, and buried a short time later in Roseville, Minnesota.
Jason, it was really surprising when he died because I was into Mitch Hedberg. He's sort of a college comedian, and I was around college age. And when you heard him on that Howard Stern show, he didn't sound like a guy who was teetering on the brink. He said he had the drugs under control. He always had a sort of stoner aesthetic to his presentation style, but this wasn't Amy Winehouse level drug abuse. This was a guy who was mild-mannered, a bit shy. He wore those dark glasses, had some personality quirks, but you didn't see a Chris Farley sort of persona that was teetering on the edge.
His acknowledgement that he had him under control was not a statement that he was sober by any means. He felt that, as I guess many addicts do, he felt that he could maintain and manage his addiction. And apparently couldn't, I guess. But you're right. To the point you're making, there was no indication while doing Howard Stern. He seemed lucid, seemed talkative. Amy Winehouse, Chris Farley, those people, every time you saw them do an interview, you thought, oh my God, there's something profoundly wrong with this person.
Yeah.
They're clearly addicted. They're clearly on drugs. They're clearly high during the interview.
Friends sending them to rehab constantly.
They, both, even outside the public eye, when they did engage with the public, there was a freneticism that didn't exist with Hedberg. He seemed much more in control. Apparently, he wasn't.
Yeah. And although his comedy wasn't personal, he didn't go out of his way to hide himself behind a purely comedic persona that was entirely divorced from reality. There were long autobiographical narratives to track his state of mind, but it was no secret that he was a recreational drug user. And he even mentioned it in one of his most famous jokes, saying, quote, "I used to do drugs. I still do, but I used to too." As his fame rose,
His recitation of that joke was a little bit funnier.
a little bit than I sort of
made it sound like a really sad thing there.
I did butcher one of the most famous Mitch Hedberg jokes.
No, but I liked it. Just
gave it some podcast
gave
voice.
It more deadpan than a dead comedian could give. That was something.
That was something. As his fame rose, Hedberg would also give interviews and would sometimes joke about drugs, as in a 2001 interview with Penthouse, when he answered a question about how he wanted to die, saying, quote, "First, I'd want to get famous, and then I'd overdose. If I overdosed at this stage in my career, I'd be lucky if I made it to the back pages." I don't want to overstate this as some admission of his drug problem or anything like that. He was a comedian, and this could have just seemed like a funny way to answer a question like that, but still, it's worth noting he wasn't presenting himself as completely sober and straight edge kind of guy.
But there is a distinction there, right? That's what you're trying to draw. And we talked about this a second ago between him and Farley. Farley actually had those comments, right, where he wanted to die the exact same way that John Belushi died. But for him, there really seemed like, and it happened that he died of drug overdose, Farley did. It seemed like he was actually saying something that was truthful within him.
It sounded like a cry for help from Chris Farley.
Right.
Hedberg, it sounded like part of his persona.
Right, I think he was making a joke, but he also had a drug habit, but he was able to divorce the two in a way that I think that Farley wasn't able to do.
I agree. On a more serious note, he was arrested in Austin, Texas for heroin possession in 2003 and even addressed his drug issues during that final interview on Stern, saying, "Well, I got the drugs under control now," and insisting he could manage the habit and use them just for the creative side of things. Again, it bears mention that this was not a serious interview with Howard Stern or any sort of intervention about Hedberg's drug use, but he certainly had the look of a stoner with that flop of hair and those dark sunglasses. Even so, there was just no immediate cause for concern or alarm. It just seemed to be his persona. Indeed, the rest of the interview with Howard was lighthearted and fun, and Hedberg fielded questions about how he hoped to build his career now that he was well known in the stand-up world.
In the end, all signs point to this being an accidental overdose, perhaps brought on by a grueling tour schedule and just generally not taking the best care of himself while on the road. Hedberg's wife, Lynn Shawcroft, was also a comedian, and the two of them would drive around the country in an RV. She's given a few interviews in the years since his death and commented on just how committed Hedberg was to touring and staying very active on the stand-up circuit.
He said, I thought I could just roll into Hollywood and just lay back and they would just tell me exactly what to do. But
Right.
if you don't have an idea, you're screwed.
Did anybody give you a script to read? Or
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of people. I met with a lot of people, and they all had weird ideas. Like the guy who writes with Mike Judge on that cartoon, what about the Texas Family, the cartoon, I don't know the name of it.
King of the Hill.
King of the Hill. I met with his partner, and he said, I see you as a tennis instructor.
You're kidding me.
No,
A tennis instructor. And like, was there any like an edgy tennis? Because you're kind of an edgy guy. I mean,
Tennis instructor on Xanax.
Did he know you at all?
no, I
he
see
did.
you as like a drug addict.
Drug addict. Maybe a counselor, after the drug.
Life on the road can be a tremendous grind and not necessarily the healthy of lifestyles with the odd hours, fast food, and copious drug use in the comedy club scene.
Defining and categorizing the brilliance of someone like Mitch Hedberg is a difficult task in some ways. Most stand-up comedy is meant to serve as a mirror for humanity, finding room for unexpected laughter within the most relatable aspects of the human condition or exploring political and social issues that resonate with the audience or provide a release for uncomfortable topics. This is why someone like Jerry Seinfeld can become so successful, pointing out the absurdities of everyday life, teasing out laughs from something as mundane as serving peanuts on commercial flights. And there's certainly artistry in it, but you can see how it translates broadly and starts to curdle into bland, inoffensive dad humor over time. Mitch Hedberg was different. His jokes feel as bracingly original and cool now as they did 30 years ago. He was an avant-garde comedian who might still feel avant-garde today, brilliantly blending surrealism and stoned musings into a fully realized brand of comedy that continues to influence the most creative comedians today, like Bo Burnham, Dimitri Martin, and Anthony Jeselnik.
I think his style of comedy isn't unfamiliar with today's audiences. A lot of sort of that deadpan, clever one-liners. Jeselnik's a good one. Jeselnik was more long-form,
And a bit darker.
Tells the long stories a bit darker. Hedberg was more, it was certainly a slower pace, but it was more sort of staccato joke after joke after joke. But it's sort of like Zach Galifianakis is somebody that comes to mind.
It's a good comp.
Keeps that really stoic demeanor when he delivers a joke, but there's always that, you're waiting for it to land.
Yes.
And it always comes. But he had a very unique style. But again, I think it was more unique for the time than it was today. Maybe he was a bit of a precursor to what we see today in today's comedy.
I think that's right, and the shelf life does seem longer. Some of those observations, they're perfect, right? I used to do drugs, I still do. That is the formulation of that joke and the structure of it stands the test of time. It's like Rodney Dangerfield has some one-liners that even though he's been dead for years and was a comedian back in the sort of 60s, you can still listen to Rodney Dangerfield and enjoy it.
I agree.
In some ways, Mitch Hedberg was always destined to be a bit offbeat. Born in Minnesota in 1968, birthplace of many other eccentric artists like Bob Dylan, Prince, and the Coen brothers, Hedberg was a good student and whip smart, but lost interest around 10th grade and never did attend college. He kicked off his stand-up career in Florida, but a 1997 appearance on The Late Show with David Letterman did provide his big break. Letterman, who, as I mentioned,
is a talented comedian making his network television debut with us here tonight. He will be performing in Las Vegas at the Riviera Comedy Club March 24th through the 30th. Please welcome Mitch Hedberg. Mitch!
Thank you. You guys feel good? Yeah. I feel very good too right now, I tell you, man. I've been walking around New York City. Anyone see me? I've been walking around checking it out. People always trying to hand me out flyers, When someone tries to hand me out a flyer, it's kind of like they're saying, here, you throw this away.
Letterman, who, as I mentioned before, was known for his unconventional comedy and attracting a cooler audience than Leno's Tonight Show, was the perfect place for Mitch Hedberg to start. And you can hear how good he was already. When it was clicking with the audience, the act was such a well-oiled machine. Although each joke is mostly disconnected from the previous one, they somehow all work, which is truly an incredible feat, because each change in topic could threaten the rhythm that most comedians rely on to keep a crowd engaged. You think of someone like Louis C.K., he weaves a story, and you're along for the ride. Dave Chappelle, the same way. Yeah. It's not to take anything away from that talent. That is a talent unto itself as well, to sort of bring the audience along on a journey. But Mitch was doing a high wire act because each joke could flop, and he just moved, pivoted the entire show.
A lot of that was Chappelle, right? Chappelle's jokes are not, he's got some incredible jokes too, but it's not what's best about his shows. What's best about his shows is his delivery.
Just listening to him.
The acting ability that he has on stage, the facial gestures, the eyes wide. Hedberg had a lot of mania up on stage, but he was banking on the delivery of the punchline each and every time for carrying the joke along and carrying the audience along. And without that, his delivery, it wasn't based on the delivery.
You're right. There wasn't much to him. It was about the writing.
Exactly. From Letterman, it was off to the races. He was such an obvious genius operating at the highest level of comedy. at once iterating and improving upon the similar works of Stephen Wright while becoming an absolute favorite in the college scene when people are at their most creative and receptive to new and quirky ideas. Hedberg's 3 comedy albums, Strategic Grilled Locations, Mitch Altogether, and Do You Believe in Gosh, were literally passed around college dorms like people in the 60s used to pass around concert footage of the Grateful Dead. But he was so much more than just a stoner comedian like Cheech and Chong. His jokes were anything but lowbrow. They were unique and mind-bendy in the best possible sense of the word, but still somehow accessible to most people. And he wasn't going unnoticed. Hedberg signed a $500,000 deal with Fox to develop a television sitcom, and Time magazine dubbed him the next Seinfeld, which, even if their styles were radically different, is the highest praise a person can receive when developing a sitcom. He did this all while maintaining credibility in the comedy world, earning the respect of peers like George Carlin and Dave Chappelle and Norm Macdonald. So what exactly was the magic sauce that went into Mitch Hedberg's comedy? First, he had a unique stage presence and delivery that perfectly suited the material. He wasn't standoffish or confrontational in any way. He was like a genial and idiosyncratic stoner with long hair and sunglasses, the type of guy who looked like he walked off the set of Richard Linklater's Dazed and Confused. His entire act consisted of compact 1- and 2-line jokes with very little in the way of connective tissue between them. Joe Rogan, a big admirer of Hedberg, has noted how risky that form of comedy can be because it's really just a series of non sequiturs that each have to work on their own with very little room for error or just getting into the flow.
Hedberg could just go on for days. He had so much fucking material, man. That guy wrote constantly. He was always writing till the end. In the end, the drugs got to him. Obviously, they killed him. But he was that's a non sequitur style. That's the hardest style of comedy. You say one thing and then you say something totally unrelated to the next joke. And the next.
His comedy was like a tightrope act, where each step into a new topic could potentially tank the whole set. When a joke failed, he'd often turn into a meta-commentary on the style of humor itself. In Strategic Grill Locations, he followed up a joke that didn't hit as hard with, all right, that joke is going to be good because I'm going to take all the words out and add new words.
I thought that was sort of brilliant, right? Like he flops and then he does his own sort of like meta commentary on flopping with his own sort of Mitch Hedberg-y joke. You don't love him as much as I do.
No,
I really do.
No.
Think he's
no. I think that's really clever.
He's a genius.
Not just to comment on him now, but that's very clever, right? Comedians have forever been flopping and trying to laugh at themselves when they do so, and there's a certain formula for it where you kind of play with the audience, like wink at them, say, hey, I'm just one of you guys now, or I'm trying my best up here. And his whole take was, that joke's going to kill because I'm just going to do it again with all new words.
I'm going to change the joke entirely.
Exactly.
It's a very, very smart and clever way of doing it. But when it did work, it really was a symphony.
I like rice. Rice is great when you're hungry and you want 2,000 of something. All right. Yeah. My mom loves those applause breaks. Refried beans. I like refried beans. That's why I want to try fried beans, because maybe they're just as good and we're wasting time. I went to a pizzeria. I ordered a slice of pizza. The dude gave me the smallest slice possible. If the pizza was a pie chart for what people would do if they found $1 million, this dude gave me the donate it to charity slice. I would like to exchange this for the keep it.
The way he would play with language and not overwrite the jokes or drive them into the ground was truly a marvel. So many comedians rely on verbose flights of fancy. I think of a guy like Patton Oswalt. He's a very, very good comedian, but often when I watch him, he's so dexterous with words that he'll just run the joke over and over again in different packaging. And it's clever and it's enjoyable to watch in the moment.
In its own right.
But it is just sort of overplaying the same joke and showing how smart you are with vocabulary. And it can really mask a mediocre topic and wrap it up in lots of window dressing. Mitch Hedberg didn't do that. He was known for his economy of words. You look at his famous jokes about, like, I like to eat rice because it's the only thing you can eat 1 million of. That's it. He states it there, whether you get the joke or not, whether you like the joke or not. He doesn't continue to perseverate on the idea of rice being small.
It's a certain type of comedy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that joke, you said it, even if you didn't get the joke, I think everybody gets that joke. No,
no, it's fair.
I'm not meaning to make fun of you. Everybody gets that joke. not everybody's going to find that joke funny. It is a very Letterman-esque type of comedy, right? I mean,
it fits right there with stupid pet tricks and things like that.
Right.
Either you're in on it and you're along for the ride, but it is stupid.
It's not for everybody, but that's okay. And he didn't seem to care that it not be for everybody, right? He was telling a very specific type of comedy, and that's who he was. And he did it really, really effectively. I mean, $500,000 from Fox back in the day it meant that they thought that this guy could really be the next Seinfeld, which is what they wanted.
They really did. And because he's been gone for nearly 2 decades and spawned so many imitators, it's easy to lose sight of how bracingly original and innovative Mitch Hedberg felt at the time to fans of stand-up comedy. Although elements of Hedberg could be found in the earlier work of Stephen Wright, there was something a bit hipper and more accessible about Mitch. Even if he appealed to nerdier audiences, his comedy wasn't confined to intellectuals and never felt too esoteric for broader audiences to enjoy. He's why people like Bo Burnham and Dimitri Martin can have these successful careers without dumbing down their material. Hedberg made it feel possible to bring the audience along with him into his uniquely creative, offbeat, and sometimes downright weird thought process. Now it's all commonplace, just part of the comedy landscape. But it wasn't always. And so I wanted to give the final word to someone who watched Hedberg's rise in real time, Mark Maron, who is a fellow comedian and student of comedy who observed it all and offers a glimpse into how special it was, saying, quote, "Before he was a star, if the audience didn't get on board, he could bomb. But if they did sort of lock in, he could kill. It was sort of fascinating because he had a sort of taste. That was the way he was going to do it. He wasn't going to go in any other way. If the audience didn't get on board, it would be a long half hour to an hour for them. But if they did, if they got him, he would destroy. It was kind of fascinating."